are stories that connect us to ourselves and each other. These stories reveal who we are and show us the many vivid, wild colors of our truth. Welcome to Soul Wanderings, where we raise spiritual awareness and foster connections through these shared stories and personal experiences. And now, exclusively on KGRA Radio, I give you your host for Soul Wanderings Radio. Here's AJ.
Hi everyone, welcome. I am AJ Rasmussen and this is Soul Wanderings. It's a show where we receive an opportunity to hear journey stories from humans from all walks of life and all types of experiences. And these humans show up to share authentic pieces of themselves with all of us. I get to do this fun show once a week with all of you, and during the day I hang out at one of my favorite places, which is Vibes, Mind, Body, Spirit. Vibes is a fun little shop. I don't know how to even explain it to you without saying it's just fun. It's a healing center, and we have incense and crystals and all your smudging tools, your witchy tools, your spiritual tools, all the types of things you need for your practices, or I shouldn't say need, but desire. We have them all there, so be sure to check out that website, which is vibesnow.com, and that's vibes with a Z. We are live over on kgradb.com. You can check out KGRA's Facebook and YouTube pages, and you can join in the conversation and hang out with myself, with my producer, Bill, and all of our other listeners, our wanderers. Go to kgradb.com, click on the chat button. You can hang out in the chat room or on Facebook and YouTube. Like I said, we're in all of those places. So just come and hang out. It's a good place to be. And if you have questions for our guests, you can pop them in there and we'll grab them as time allows us to do so. Before we do continue on with our guest tonight, just a little announcement. Well, a big announcement. I want to share with you that KGRA is having their 9th birthday bash coming up on March 31st. And both Race Hobbs and Bill Skywatcher, my producer tonight, will be DJing that event. It will be aired during my show time, so my show will go earlier that night. It will be 9 p.m. Eastern on March 31st, and you can watch it live on kgradb.com and Facebook and YouTube as well. In fact, let's bring Bill on. And Bill, why don't you share a little bit with us about that event that you and Race Hobbs will be hosting?
Yes, well, I'm looking forward to it. It's the 9th annual KGRA party, I would say, because KGRA has been around since 2012. Race was part of the creation, as well as Warren back in the day. But we're going to have an hour. We'll celebrate the 9th year of KGRA. I'm sure since I'll be producing your show before this goes on the air, you get to hang out with us and maybe be the first person to come on and talk about KGRA. How long have you been on KGRA now?
A couple of years.
So we're going to bring on a bunch of hosts, special guests, to celebrate the hour, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I got to say, I'm really looking forward to this show tonight with both of you. And just a little hint, my mom is in the room watching the show because she's so excited to see the both of you talking about the discussion that you're going to have tonight with fairies and all the mystical lore. And also, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody out there.
Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well.
And I just want to say a selfish hello to my brother's wife, if she's watching, Lisa, and everybody out there. Thank you for being here. Hope you enjoy KGRA. Be there March 31st, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And looking forward to seeing everybody there. So both of you have a great show.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for sharing.
See you later.
So tonight is a special St. Patrick's Day show. I have the best guest for all of us tonight because it is St. Patrick's Day, and I'm completely giddy to have our guest to celebrate this day. So tonight we'll learn more about this day of celebration, which will be a lot of fun, but we'll also learn about a lot of other things. Tonight, our guest is Morgan Daimler. She's a witch who has been a polytheist since the early 90s, and she's followed a path inspired by the Irish fairy faith. Say that a few times. Irish fairy faith, blended with neopagan witchcraft, and she teaches classes on Irish myth and magical practices, fairies, and related subjects in the United States and internationally. She's been published in multiple anthologies as well as in Witches and Pagans magazine and also Pagan Dawn magazine. And she is one of the world's foremost experts on all things fairy. But we'll be talking more about than just fairies. Tonight we'll be talking about St. Patrick's Day. We'll be talking about cryptids and paranormal. We'll even be talking about leprechauns, I just found out. So let's welcome to the show our special guest, Morgan Daimler. Hi, dear.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm so excited for you to be here. When I found out about you, I was like, she would be the perfect guest for St. Patrick's Day. And lo and behold, you were available. So I'm super happy about that.
Yeah, it works out really well.
And I love the red hair. It's so appropriate.
Thank you. It has its moments.
Yes, as all hair does, right? I mean, it's so moody sometimes.
Yeah, it gets feisty on occasion.
Does the personality match the hair?
I think that probably depends on who you ask, but sometimes I'm fairly easygoing, so I don't have that usual fiery redhead thing, but I can definitely have my moments. Particularly discussing this subject, I can get a little feisty, so we'll see.
I'm excited to hear what you have to share with us. It's going to be great. I just feel it in my bones. I'm excited. We have all of your titles. We've shared a little bit about you, and I know that there's so much more. So why don't you give us a little introduction of yourself and share with us some good stuff about you?
Sure. I mean, you definitely covered the highlights. I started writing in 2010, so I've got quite a few books out there at this point. I do nonfiction, mostly about Irish mythology, and Irish deities, and also fairies, of course. I also have some fiction. I do a urban fantasy series to kind of have something fun in the mix. You got to break up that nonfiction once in a while. Okay. But, this is a subject, fairies, that has kind of been a lifelong interest of mine. I grew up in the Irish American diaspora, which is just a fancy way of saying that my grandfather was from Ireland, and I kind of grew up with the American version of that. So St. Patrick's Day was always a big holiday for us, sort of tell stories of the family, and you have to have corned beef and cabbage. It's literally required. I don't know, horrible things would happen if we didn't have it.
Bad luck.
It is terrible bad luck. And, when I was really little, I used to have experiences with fairies, with these beings. And I was really lucky that I was in a family where they were very tolerant. I guess we'd say, like, nobody ever tried to discourage me or tell me that I was not having the experiences I was having. Because I know that happens a lot with a lot of children that have paranormal or supernatural experiences. And so to me, fairies were just always a reality. It was always something that, was out there. And as I got a little older into my teens, I started really trying to research the folklore behind them, to have some sort of context for myself. Because I was having these experiences and, seeing these things and all of this, but I needed some kind of structure to help understand it, especially at like 12 and 13. And from there, it just became, I don't want to say obsession because that sounds bad, but definitely a lifelong interest. I'm quite a bit older than 12 at this point. And, I never stopped researching the folklore and digging into the beliefs. And the more you get into it, the more it just kind of pulls you in further, because it's all so fascinating and there's so much to it. It's like one of those, like, the more you learn, the less you know kind of situations.
Yes, that's how I feel too.
Yeah. There's just so much out there, and there's so many different beliefs in different places. Like even Ireland is kind of my main focus, but even in Ireland, if you go to different areas, they'll have different understandings of things or different stories. And then if you go to like Scotland or Wales or England, then you have even more variety. And to me, that's just, how can that not be fascinating? How can you not want to dig more into that?
Right. And they're just such mysterious little creatures anyway. And they have their own little type of energy that goes along with them. And we grew up learning that, like, fairies are so cute and playful and they grant wishes and stuff like that. But that's not always the case.
No, there's a huge range. And even the idea of them being small, I mean, that is true for some of them, but we have some that are human-like, some that are cats, some that are dogs, fairy horses are a thing. And we have some that are more helpful, that are more inclined to like be a positive influence with people. We have some that are more dangerous. So we have, stories, particularly like I just mentioned, the fairy horses, a lot of the folklore connected to them. They're actually water spirits. They live in lakes and rivers, and they are definitely not on the friendly end of the spectrum most of the time.
I wasn't even aware there were other types of fairy energy, like horses and like other animals. That's new to me.
Like I said, it's just, this is what's so fascinating about it, because there's so much to it. There's so much depth and range, and like you find the fairy horses in Ireland and Scotland, but if you go into Scandinavian lore, like Iceland or Norway or Sweden even, they have something very similar. There's a different name for it there, but it's the same idea. It's a horse that lives in the water, that can be kind of unsafe to be around. And that to me is just so interesting. Like either there definitely is something that is that people have experienced in all these different places, or there's something about that concept that is just ingrained in humans, that you see these stories kind of shared across all these different cultures and places. So,
well, here in the U.S., so at least to my awareness, there's not a lot of just that. There's not a lot of awareness that takes place when it comes to the Fae. And when you learn more about like the Irish and over in Europe, how they have the different types of folklore, that's like embedded in their history. That's something that everyone knows about. It's ingrained in every story, childhood story, I should say. But here it's not like that. Like we don't hear about the Fae. We don't hear those stories much unless we're watching like Peter Pan.
Yeah, we definitely have a different approach over here. And of course, I shouldn't say of course. Let me back that up a tiny bit. My personal belief is that there are fairy-like beings all around the globe. Anywhere you have humans or human culture, you have beings that would fit kind of this description. And so we do have ones that are indigenous or native to, North America, the United States. But they have different names. They wouldn't be called fairies, of course, by the people who originally had encountered and experienced them. They would have different names. But when you look at the stories of them and the folklore, there's a lot of similarities and sort of not direct equivalency, but like clear comparisons with what we find with the European folklore. And, you know, I think part of the reason in Europe and in Ireland in particular that these beings are so much more embedded, if you will, is because they're very strongly connected to physical places and physical things. And that becomes sort of woven into the stories that you grow up with, and the idea that, you know, this particular hill that's right outside of town, you have to be careful because that's a fairy hill and you want to be respectful of it. Or, you know, this particular tree is a fairy tree. And so, you know, you don't mess with it. You're respectful of their space. And there have been cases even within the last 20 years where roads were rerouted in Ireland and also in Iceland as well, because of, you know, a fairy tree was in the way. So they kind of shift where the road is. Or in Iceland, as opposed to trees, it's usually stones. They call them Alfakirkjan, which means elf churches. The idea is that the stone is sort of where the fairies live, or a doorway to where they live. So you don't want to mess with them. You want to be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
Basically. You wouldn't bulldoze your neighbor's house. Yeah, exactly. So they'll reroute roads. And there was one case where they were building a road and the fairy church, the fairy rock, got covered in all kinds of dirt and stuff. And then they had all these problems, like people were hearing music, and there were lots of like paranormal things that started happening. So they went out and started very carefully cleaning the rock off. Mm-hmm. And then the paranormal activity stopped, because the idea was they had upset, you know, the elves that lived there, which is fair. I'd be upset if somebody put a bunch of dirt on my house too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, it really is interesting, though. Just like humans, there's all different types of humans. So why wouldn't there be all different types of fae? We've had a guest in the past, and he actually used to have a show here on the station, Cameron Hale, and he loves the fae folk. He has so many stories, and I love having him on. And he was one of so I've showed you some of my books, but like, I was interested in fairies a long time ago, but as I've gotten an adult, you know, you become adult and you kind of forget your connection to that type of energy. But he reminded me very much of that energy being alive right next to us. And it wasn't until recently that I had my own interaction with fairies, like in the last couple of years. So, it's neat because now it's like tangible for me because I've had the experience. But talking to people about it, there's just so much that's unknown, and so many things that we can learn from fairies and the different types of fairies that there are. I just don't think people, like with anything anomalous, they just don't know what to believe. They just like, how do we start learning about it? Because, you know, the internet is a vast space.
It is.
And what's real and what's not real.
Yeah. And there's a lot of good out there, and there's a lot of questionable stuff out there. And it can be hard to kind of navigate all of that for sure.
Well, we do have a question from the chat room already. They want to know, what does it mean when we have contact with different creatures like a fairy person? So do they have intention when they get in touch with us, or is it by chance?
It can be either. You know, sometimes it definitely seems like there's intention, and that they're this is going to sound more ominous than I intended, but they're like singling someone out, that there's a particular person they have an interest in or want to have a connection with. And so we do see accounts like that, and they clearly do it with a purpose. And other times it seems more like the human just happens to be in the right place at the right time, and the human's there and the fairies are there. And so then you get the interaction that way. But, what does it mean when you have contact with something like a fairy person? I think it would depend a lot on what the exact contact was, but, sort of within the context of if it seemed like it was sort of a positive experience, it could mean that they just happen to like you. They're much like humans, like you had said earlier. Sometimes they just like a person. And, if they like you, then they'll be prone to being around you and interacting with you. It's the same thing if they don't like someone. There's really nothing you can do to make them like you. Just like a human, Yeah.
They're moody too.
They can be. Yeah. They're definitely known for being sort of mercurial. I think some of that is a bit of an unfair reputation because I don't know that it's so much that they're mercurial as that they have different rules than humans have. They're a different culture, if you will. And I think sometimes, humans can do things that annoy them or upset them without realizing it, just because it's a different concept. Like it's a common thing you'll hear in fairy folklore and with people who, work to connect with these beings, that you shouldn't say thank you because, for whatever reason, with some of them that seems to upset them or offend them. So like that's a thing most humans, particularly like, in our culture, you're sort of taught from a young age, you always say thank you.
Right.
If someone gives you a gift or is nice.
Otherwise,
I usually try to say something like, I'm grateful for this, or I appreciate this. It seems to be specifically the wording of thank you. And one thing that they kind of across folklore, the majority of fairies are known for is getting really into semantics, like exactly what words mean, which is why, again, they kind of get this bad reputation. But I think some of it is that they tend to speak in a very literal way and humans don't. So there can be some miscommunication and misunderstandings. But if you kind of go back to what thank you originally meant in English, it does have to do with implying that you owe a debt. And I think that's probably the root of why some of them don't like it.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah. So are they otherworldly, or are they just another form of being here on Earth?
That's an excellent question. I think when we're talking about fairies, again, we're talking about this wide range. And for me, at least, I think the bulk of them are otherworldly. They're something that comes from another world, another reality, another dimension, whatever you want to call it, but can come here and can interact with us, and clearly has motivation to do so, for whatever reason they have. Right. But I do think we also see beings that get labeled as fairies that we might call nature spirits, that are kind of, they belong in this world, they're from this world, but they still sort of fit some of those criteria that people have for fairies. So I think it's a little bit of category A and a little bit of category B going on.
Well, it's hard to wrap your mind around, because humans are such selfish beings, right? We think we're the only ones that exist in all the places and all the things. And when you think about not just fairies, but anything that's not human, you wonder what their purpose is for interacting with us when we obviously aren't going out there and interacting with them. Like, we say we want to and we have the intent to, but I'm not sure if that's really ever happened.
Well, it's tough with fairies because I think, culturally it's so ingrained in us here that they're not really real. So I think sometimes people talk about, wanting to connect with them or wanting to experience them, but they don't really believe in them. And, that can be a bit of a gray zone, I think, then for, where you go from there. I think it helps when you have more solid belief, although lots of people who are skeptical and straight out don't believe do have experiences. So
isn't that fascinating? You attract it. Like, I don't believe you. And they're like, we're going to prove you wrong.
Yeah, it seems to be that way sometimes. They're like, you really don't believe in us. Let's see about that.
Right. Well, they have a reputation of being a little bit mischievous. Is that known to you as well?
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. Yeah. Even the more positive ones, the people that would consider, more positive end of things, are known for being prone to playing tricks and usually more harmless on that end. So mischievous is definitely accurate.
I love that energy. I think it's fun. If I'm not the one being picked on. Right?
I could tell you a couple stories about fairy pranks.
Yeah, well, let's do that. Let's get into that right after our break. So it's already that time, our first break of the show. So we'll do that. And when we get back, let's hear about some of those pranks, because I think they're entertaining. They're fun. And in the spirit of St. Patrick's Day, let's do it. We'll be right back, everyone. Stay close.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Are you still at it?
Yeah, I need more speed.
This baby's fast.
My dad's fast. He's scary fast.
You really think you could beat him?
Yeah, because I drink more tea than he does.
Yeah, right.
You know, pal, it's the tea that makes you go.
Oh.
Hey, Dad.
You know, kiddo, you have to drink a lot more tea to be faster than me.
Drink the tea that makes you go. Life Change Tea. You may not need as much as Dad. You never know. GetTheTea.com. Log on to GetTheTea.com.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button. So just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Soul Wanderings, heard here on KGRADB.com. We are hanging out with our beautiful guest tonight, Morgan Daimler, and so far we're learning about fairies, the little fairies. So, little mischievous fairies. Let's hear about some of these stories.
Yes. So, as I mentioned, I've been interested in this for a long time. So I actually have a lot of stories. But a couple that I'll tell here for the mischievous category. There's a thing that happens that's known in folklore, and it's called being pixie-led or fairy-led. And this is when you get lost in a familiar place where you should not logically be able to get lost. And this happened at this point probably 20 years ago. I was hanging out with a group of friends. There were 6 or 7 of us, and we were at one of the friends' houses, and they had suggested, because it was a full moon, that it would be fun to kind of hike back through the woods. There was a reservoir a ways back, and they had grown up in the area. They had done this a million times. They knew this like cool area we could go. And, I was probably 21 or 22 at the time. So this is kind of the age group we're talking about. And so the whole bunch of us go off into the woods and, went and hung out for a little bit. No alcohol involved or anything like that. Just sort of hanging out under the full moon, as you do.
Yes.
When you're,
when you are a little witchy woo.
Yeah. When you're a little witchy and you're in the suburbs and in your 20s. But eventually we were like, okay, this has been fun, but let's head back. And so we started heading back. And, like I said, this is somewhere she had grown up there. It was her parents' house. She had done this a million times. It was a full moon, so it wasn't really that dark. And we could actually see the lights from the houses on the street that she lived on. And it took us maybe 15 minutes to get out there when we walked out. So after about 25 minutes of trying to walk out of the woods, we all kind of realized that there was something going on, because we're walking straight towards these lights, but somehow we could just not get any closer. And so we're going and, eventually some people start to get a little concerned and upset. And it was definitely kind of a strange sensation, because where you are and your mind is trying to tell you that this is not how reality works. Like if you walk forward for half an hour, a 15-minute distance, you should not still be in the woods. And we just couldn't get closer to the lights. So finally, one friend and I just started laughing. And I don't even know why we started laughing, because the whole situation was kind of ridiculous, but we just started laughing. And my friend was like, oh, fairies, this is a great joke. This is hilarious. We're just stuck in the woods forever. Apparently it's fine. It's awesome. But as soon as we started laughing and we're kind of like, oh, we're having a great time, this is so much fun, it was like you could feel the energy change. Ooh. And within like 5 more minutes, we were out of the woods. It was like as soon as we were like, this is fun, we're enjoying it, they were like, okay, you can leave.
It's not fun for us anymore.
Right. And I would count that as mischievous. Like nobody, yes. It wasn't harmful. They weren't trying to hurt anybody. Definitely messing with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I feel like they are too. I've also known fairies being quite mean, even downright evil. I've heard some stories that are on the darker side even. Do you have any experiences like that?
I do. Let me try to think of some to tell. There was one, this didn't happen to me. This was a story someone told me. And this was something that happened years ago. When you have a house that's empty for a while, sometimes what can happen is fairies will kind of move in. And again, this is something, it definitely happens in modern times, but we kind of also see it in older anecdotal accounts. They're fond of ruins and things like that. So if you have a modern house that's empty for, years, they will also kind of move into that sometimes too. And this woman had bought a house and it had been vacant for, I think, 3 or 4 years. And she moved in and she decided to start putting up a lot of wrought iron. And iron, of course, is a protection against fairies. They don't like it. They don't want to be around it. If you're trying to keep them away, that's what you do. So sort of unintentionally, she really offended whatever was there. And she was standing on top of a 6-foot retaining wall on the property one day and felt hands push her on her back. And she went forward and fell and ended up breaking her arm. So she was a little concerned and wondering, what should she do? Because she hadn't meant to upset them. And, my advice was probably no more iron all over the place, because that's what the problem is.
Why
so
would
they
the iron
can be like that? Iron is a protection against fairies and we find this again, multiple different cultures have this same belief. No one knows exactly why. Sometimes in folklore, you don't get an explanation for why something works. You just get told, if you want to protect against fairies, iron. It doesn't work against everything, of course, but iron's kind of the go-to for a lot of things. My personal theory is iron's a very grounding metal. It's the least electrically conductive metal that there is. And I suspect, it's my pure personal supposition here, I suspect that the magic that fairies use, which is sort of an integral part of what they are, it either grounds that out or kind of acts like a negative field.
That would make sense.
Yeah, so they don't want to be around it at all.
No, that would completely make sense. But they're elementals too, and I would imagine that, with that being said, they have some elements that work with them and some that work against them.
Yep, and there's definitely some fairies that iron doesn't bother them. Especially the ones that are more connected to like the earth, like mine fairies, or, fairies that are generally around the home, like hearth and home fairies. Iron doesn't usually bother them either. So it's definitely not everything.
What do you think their purpose is? I'm not quite sure about what the human purpose is yet. But do you have any idea what the fairies are here for? And are they trying to teach us or tell us anything? Or are they just, kind of existing in the same realm we are?
I think it varies a little bit. I think some of them do seem interested in teaching humans or encouraging humans in particular directions. And, we have stories of that going back 400 years. There's accounts from Scotland from the 17th century, the 1600s, of witches who were, would claim that they were taught by the fairies, the good folk, that they particularly taught things like healing skills. So, there seems to be a long history of some of them having an interest in, for whatever reason, teaching humans particular skills and helping them. Others definitely are not fans of humanity, though. And we do see some who either just entirely want to be left alone or seem to really dislike humans. And even sort of actively, try to harm them. So I think that, I think kind of like humans, it's a lot of a mixed bag. And, most folklore from different places will say that the good folk, the fairies, the elves were created before humans. So they were kind of here first, and then humans came into the picture, which might be why some of them don't like us and some of them do. Just different.
That would make sense. Yeah, that would make sense. I've also heard that people believe that fairies are the ghosts of humans crossed over. What's your take on that? What is the difference between ghosts and fairies?
Sure. I think the biggest difference between ghosts and fairies is that ghosts generally are intangible, with, momentary exceptions. Like ghosts obviously can become physical enough to touch someone briefly or touch your hair, or things like that. But generally, ghosts are not physical in our reality. Fairies can be, and we have a lot of stories where they are, and where they, directly interact with humans, or where, someone, and this includes modern anecdotal accounts, not just the older ones, where people would meet someone human looking, and then sort of realize as they're talking, this is not a human, this is something else. And they can be very physical and very tangible. When we get into the origin of fairies, though, it gets very complicated, like everything else with this wonderful subject, because there's definitely some fairies that were once human. And
oh, really?
Yep. And again, this is something we see. You'll find it in Icelandic folklore and Irish and Scottish and all over the place. The idea that sometimes the fairies will take a human. And sometimes they take a human who's still living. Sometimes they take a human who was thought to have died, or, has died. And through whatever means they have, clearly not a way that, we know or understand, but that human then becomes one of the fairies, kind of joins them and becomes a fairy. And, again, we have references to this kind of all over the place. So we do know that some fairies, that's kind of how they start out. That's what they are originally. But then we have others that we know, like I just mentioned, were definitely here before humans were here. We have stories and folklores about that. And, we have some of the fairies were originally gods, the old pagan gods. Not all older pagan gods, by the way, are fairies, but there's some crossover there.
What a transition. Wow. Could you imagine?
Yeah. It seems like in some places what happened is when they stopped being acknowledged as gods, the people couldn't quite let go of them. So they kind of remained around, and they were still acknowledged or remembered, but instead of being acknowledged and remembered as gods, they became often kings and queens of fairy, and then sort of continue on that way. There's an Irish goddess named Anya who's like that, in the Southwest, like the Limerick area. We know she's a goddess. She's referenced as a goddess in some of the mythology, but she's also known as a fairy queen. And she has one of the fairy hills in that area is her hill. And there's stories of people encountering her as a fairy queen, all that sort of thing. So it's this sort of clear continuance. Are they fairies? Are they gods? I don't know.
Who's to say?
Yeah.
I mean, really, if you
knows.
think about, how would we even know though, right? It's so cool how there's such I can't even find the words. I'm lost for words, but everything is so intermingled and so crossed, from this world to other worlds. And when you think about reincarnation, you can reincarnate as a human, or you can reincarnate as a leprechaun. I'm like, you can reincarnate as anything. And that's what's so cool about it is, there really are like these limits. It's limitless, and you can.
I think most of the limits that we find are limits that humans put on things to try to understand them.
Yeah, we're so complicated that way.
We are.
And I'm talking a lot of smack about humans tonight.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm team fairy and leprechaun tonight.
Definitely team fairy.
Yes. I want to learn about leprechauns, though. St. Patrick's Day, we'll get to that. But a question from the chat room. We're already talking about it, but are fairies alien to our world? Are they from Earth?
And once again, you guys are going to get so tired of me saying this exact same answer. The answer is yes. There's definitely some that are not from here, that are from somewhere else, and they can come here, they can interact with here, but they don't originate here. But then there are others that clearly do seem to be from here, or originally from here. So it's a little mix of both. There's some interesting conversations that have been going on recently about whether fairies are otherworldly in the sense of it's another world, another reality, plane of existence, or whether they're more like interdimensional beings.
That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. Again, I think that's one of those questions that, I mean, I'm sure it's possible for a human to get the answer, but I don't know that we would ever know what the answer was. Yeah.
Just add it to the list of things we won't know while we're human.
Yeah.
Right. What's the difference?
Transition out of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then we're just more awake. We're more aware of different possibilities. We're not so close-minded.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
So the rumor is. What about the difference between elementals and fairies? Because I've heard them called one of the same, but they're different.
Yep. I think kind of like fairies and nature spirits, that's one of those things where there's some overlap, and then there's some differences. So, if we have this broad category of fairies and we're comparing it to, say, like the broad category of animals, you have mammals, which would be, in our analogy, like the fairies that are not from this world, otherworldly fairies. But then you also have birds, which would be nature spirit fairies. And then we would also have, say, reptiles or amphibians or whatever. Those would be elementals. So they're all still in that broad category, but they're kind of different but related beings. Elementals, the concept of that comes from, I believe it's the 16th century in alchemy. Paracelsus was the one who originally suggested it, the idea that there are 4 elements and there are 4 elemental kingdoms, and they're ruled by these specific powers, and then they're connected to these specific types of fairies. Let me see if I can remember this correctly. So water would be Undina, which is like basically what we would think of as a mermaid. Fire or salamanders, which are like lizards that live in fire. Air would be sylphs, which are what we picture when most people picture when they think of fairies, like little Tinkerbell kind of beings. And then earth would be gnomes, which is exactly what you think of when you hear the word gnome.
Little gnomies.
Yep. And the idea is that they're elemental fairies or elemental beings are beings that are very strongly connected to that particular element, whether it's air or water or fire or earth.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So your fascination with fairies started at such a young age, and then you dove deep into it through your time of learning about fairies. Have you ever had any interaction with them personally?
I have. Luckily, so far, mostly positive. I have had a few negative experiences too, because I am back sassy and sometimes get myself into trouble.
That would do it.
Yeah. But try to think of some good stories to tell that would be interesting, because I tend to always tell the same stories when I talk to people. So I'll give you guys some new ones. So when I was in Iceland, I was on a tour with a bunch of other people in Iceland, and one of the days of the tour, I wasn't feeling well. And I don't know if anyone else who's listening to this has ever been in a foreign country and gotten sick, but it's actually really scary because you don't really know what to do or what you should do. And we were also, the way the tour was set up, I was helping the person who was running it. I was one of the people who was acting like as a guide, relating to folklore in different places. So it was not an ideal time for me to be sick. Not that it ever is. And I had, while we were there, been trying to connect to the Alfar, the elves, and the hidden folk, and just the fairies, what we would call fairies, that are generally around. And I spent the whole day absolutely miserable. I had talked to the person running the tour about maybe we were going to have to look at getting me to some sort of like Icelandic urgent care, because I wasn't sure what was going on. And that night I woke up at, I think it was like 3 a.m, 3 or 3:30. And I distinctly remember seeing 3 figures standing around my bed. And I looked up at them. They looked fairly human, but obviously they weren't. I knew they weren't. My roommate was still sleeping. There's no way actual humans could have gotten in there or would have any reason to be randomly standing around my bed. And I remember thinking at the time that they were there to help me. And even though I should have been super alarmed, because I woke up in a room in a foreign country with 3 figures standing around my bed, I just went back to sleep. I was just like, okay, so whatever's going on. Whatever's
ghosty. I'm going back to bed.
Yep. Like whatever's going on right now, I probably can't do anything about it anyway. So I'm just going to go back to bed. And I woke up the next morning and I felt fine. I felt absolutely fine. I had been worried that I had a sinus infection or bronchitis, which is not normally something that just goes away overnight. Right. But yeah, I woke up and completely fine, no fevers, no nothing.
Wow.
No congestion. And to this day, I honestly believe that they were healing me for whatever inexplicable reasons they had, which I'm very grateful for. But
they're giving you Reiki.
Icelandic elf Reiki.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I have another question from the chat room. It goes back to the elemental question that I had. Sure. Would an earth elemental be the strongest of the elementals?
I think I'm going to give such a philosophical answer to this. I'm sorry. I think which one is the strongest is always going to depend on which one is in its element. So, if you're dealing with water or like a windstorm, then an earth elemental is not going to be the strongest. If you're dealing with water and fire, then I think that could go either way. But, I think each of them is strong in particular ways. So it kind of depends on the exact circumstances.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I mean, it seems logical.
Yeah. I see where the question's going, and I understand the thought process with it and the why, you'd immediately assume kind of earth would be, the strongest, but I think a lot of times context with fairies or elementals or nature spirits is going to make a big difference.
Yeah. If we were wanting to connect with the Fae, what would be some good ways that we could do that, and respectively and carefully in that same regards?
Yeah, one of the first things that I always recommend to people is just try to get a feel for the etiquette, which varies depending on what you're trying to connect to. So, the rules for the Irish ones are not the same as Icelandic, and so on. But just read a little bit of folklore so you have an idea of sort of what behavior is expected, like the whole don't say thank you thing. Because that, if you are going into it kind of knowing stuff like that, you're always going to do a little better. And then honestly, just put it out there that you have this interest. Verbally say it. There's always these beings around us. Again, not to sound ominous, but they're not limited to just wilderness. We'll find them in cities and suburbs and your backyard, possibly your house. So you don't have to go anywhere special. Just kind of put it out that you have that interest in connecting, and then be open to it. I think a lot of people I see put out the interest, but then as soon as they start getting any response, they get a little freaked out.
Yeah. Right. Rightfully so. Yeah, because we're not familiar with that energy, right? And then when it really is happening, we're like, what the heck is happening?
Right. Well, and speaking of mischievous, quickly, because I know we have a break coming up, but a lot of times what'll happen, particularly with the ones that are more likely to be in your house, if they like you, they'll start stealing your stuff. So like your car keys will go missing, random stuff will go missing. It always shows back up, but it always shows up somewhere you've already looked a bunch of times that it could not possibly have been before. Right. Like the middle of your kitchen counter, suddenly there's your keys. And for whatever reason, when the ones that tend to be around your house like you, that's the stuff they do to show you that they like you.
Oh, isn't that so sweet? Drive you crazy, make you think you're going nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, how fun is that?
It's awesome.
I really love their energy, though. I mean, if we all just lighten up a little bit, be more playful and not take things so seriously, we could really learn something from the Fae, right?
I think that would be good in general for humanity. To
I agree.
Relax and lighten up a little bit.
Chill.
Yeah.
Well, the first hour we've spent talking about fairies, but there's so much more that you can share with us and so many other directions that we'll go after we return from this break. So everyone stay close. We're just getting started.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app. Free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Are you still at it?
Yeah, I need more speed.
This baby's fast.
My dad's fast. He's scary fast.
You really think you could beat him?
Yeah, because I drink more tea than he does.
Yeah, right.
Pal, it's the tea that makes you go. Oh. Hey, Dad.
Kiddo, you have to drink a lot more tea to be faster than me.
Drink the tea that makes you go. Life Change Tea. You may not need as much as Dad. You never know. GetTheTea.com. Log on to GetTheTea.com.
Welcome to the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. Here you'll find great new content, including the KGRA Classics, great shows from our archives. You'll be able to see the show times and information so you can see what show is currently on air. The on-air live button. So just go to this section and you'll be able to hear the show live with exceptional sound quality. We also have the Vault section. Make sure to subscribe to get access to great content and special features. We have the make content for our latest news and events, so make sure to sign up and you can be part of our forum. So make sure to check out the new KGRA digital broadcasting website, thekgradb.com. We look forward to seeing you there, and we hope that you enjoy the new website.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soul Wanderings, heard here on KGRADB.com. You can find us broadcasted from Salt Lake City, Utah, and Hudson Valley, New York. And I encourage you to visit our website, kgradb.com. There's exclusive content for you to see, KGRA classics. There's behind the scenes. There's so much more being added to in the members area, and you'll learn more about that if you decide to visit the 9th birthday bash for KGRA on March 31st at 9 p.m. Eastern. So stay tuned for more information. It's going to be a good one. Tonight we are wandering with our guest, Morgan. Morgan, you have so much information. How many books have you written, first of all?
I've written a total of 37 at this point.
There are so many. We were talking about that with Bill before the show, and we were thinking, or he was saying, other people that have come close to that, or maybe a little more, but there's not very many. That's an insane amount of writing. Is that what you do full time all the time?
It is. Since 2011.
Oh, wow. Really? You've written that many in 10 years?
I have,
Girl,
yeah.
that's amazing.
I like to keep busy. You got to keep busy.
No, I understand. I'm busy. I like to be busy too. What's the latest book that you have written?
Sure. So my next book that's coming out is Pagan Portals Lou, Meeting the Many-Skilled God. Pagan Portals is a series that my publisher does. I write for Moon Books out of the UK. And the idea with the Pagan Portals books is they're meant to be kind of like introduction. So they're fairly short. They usually run around 100 pages. And the intention with them is to give people a good basic understanding of a particular subject. Mm-hmm. So Pagan Portals Lou comes out May 1st and is basically an introduction to one of the Irish gods, whose name is Lou, of course. Yeah. And he's one of the more popular ones, but he's also one that he can be kind of difficult to find information on. When you read books about sort of the Celtic gods in general, you might get a few paragraphs about him. Sometimes a chapter that's going to be a lot of not necessarily looking at the mythology or folklore, but more personal opinion stuff, which isn't bad. There's nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to put something out there for people that really focus on the mythology and the folklore and the information that we do have about him from Ireland and from the native culture that he comes from, so that people could really get an idea of who he is. And again, like I said, this is one of several books in that series that I've done for them, looking at particular Irish gods.
If there's not much information out on a topic that you are wanting to write about, how do you come up with the information? Like, where do you do your research?
I go to the original material. I go to the myths themselves, and directly to what we have recorded in the folklore. I actually read Old and Middle Irish, which is what the mythology was originally written in when it was written down. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, if I'm not sure about the translation or there isn't a good translation, I will just go and do it myself, which I realize sounds like the absolute most boring hobby ever. But I find it fascinating. Yeah. I do. I'm exactly the sort of person that finds that super interesting. And the whole reason I taught myself Old and Middle Irish originally was because I was doing one of my first pagan portals, which was on the Morrigan, who is a very popular Irish goddess. And I had realized that one of her more famous stories, the translation that most people were using, was actually a terrible translation. The person who had done it, which was during the Victorian period, had not included certain things that he thought were like offensive, to his delicate sensibilities, and had added some stuff in that wasn't in the original text that he apparently thought should be there. And so it was just kind of a mess. And I got really angry with him, despite the fact he's been dead for like 100 years. And I took my anger and I taught myself a language. So
wow.
Spite's a great motivation for learning languages.
It can be. Well, it'd take a lot for me to learn another language. I slaughter them.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun.
You've been to Ireland quite a few times, I would imagine.
I have. I've been there several times. The last time, of course, was 2019, because then I was supposed to go back. Yeah, I was supposed to go back last June, and that clearly did not happen.
It's one of my dream destinations. Like, I really plan on going there. My son is getting stationed in Germany.
Oh, wow.
Just in a couple of weeks. And if everything opens up and clears its way, I'll definitely be visiting next year.
That's exciting.
I'll let you know. I'll travel with you.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Germany, actually. That's one of my bucket list spots that I haven't gotten to.
There's so much history, right? Anywhere over in Europe just blows my mind. I haven't been, but I dream about it. It will happen. And I love for folklore, and I love just history and being saturated in it. I could just almost taste it and feel it without even being there. It's just so interesting.
Oh, you'll love Ireland then.
I know I will.
It's an amazing place anyway. And it's just wonderful and beautiful, but they do have a lot of history, and it's one of the countries, I think, that has done the most to kind of try to preserve the history that they have and the stories. And even if you just go to Dublin and never leave Dublin, there's so many amazing things you can do just there. I sound like a tourist ad right now, but it's true.
No, I would imagine. And, I believe I've had many lives there before. I'm very drawn to it in ways that are very profound to me and unexplainable. There's no other way I can explain it other than I know I need to go there. Yeah. It's not even a desire anymore. It's like, I have to go there. There's something for me there. There's something for me to either learn or experience. It's waiting for me. So
I definitely believe that sometimes we just have these connections to places. And it can be really fulfilling. I realize not everyone can travel. It doesn't always work out for people, but if you have the opportunity, it can be really fulfilling to go to a place that you feel a strong connection to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we should, if we have the opportunity to do it, why not? Yeah. Follow your heart.
Well, and you're only in this body in this incarnation once, right? So
thank goodness.
Well, yeah. But that's kind of been my attitude. I mentioned I've been writing full time since 2011. My middle daughter, who was born in 2007, has a lot of health issues. So I had to stop working outside of the home. And since I was here anyway, I figured I would keep myself busy by writing. But that was also sort of when I came to this conclusion of like, you don't want to waste time. You don't know how much time you've got. You don't know what you're going to be able to do. So
it is so moment. Very precious.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Thank you for the reminder.
It's so easy to forget, I think, particularly now during COVID times when nobody gets to do anything.
Right. They're like, we'll just Netflix and chill again.
And I've watched so much Netflix.
What a waste. I love staying busy. I have over 100 hobbies. I love doing
good for you.
Things. And when I don't want to do all of those things, I'll find other things to do.
That's awesome, though. I think it's great to have that sort of diversity of interest, because it makes life more interesting.
Yeah.
There's always something to learn.
Absolutely. What's been one of your most favorite topics that you have learned about that was either like you had no idea, you didn't see it coming, or it just blew your mind, or you thought maybe I'll dig into it, might be interesting, you just found yourself completely immersed?
Oh, that's a good question. because there's so much. And I am one of those people that I definitely tend to get like sucked into things. I think honestly, and this is going to be such a strange answer, I told you I have an urban fantasy series that I write, and I was working on an anthology for that series. And one of the stories in it was set in 1912. And I am one of those people, as you may have been able to tell from the fact that I taught myself a dead language so I could translate stuff, that is a bit into the research and the accuracy. So I couldn't write this story without researching life in 1912 and what that would be like, so I could make it accurate. Not that most readers would know, and I actually found that really, really fascinating. There was a lot of things I hadn't realized about that time period and what life was like. And it was kind of right on that cusp when cars were coming in and becoming more popular. And I if I start going on this, I'm just going to like wax philosophical about 1912. But I definitely did not expect to get sucked into that and deeply enthralled with like what life was like at that point. But I really did. It's super interesting.
It would be interesting, no doubt about it. But also the topics that you are learning about are just so unknown. You're digging up stories and experiences that have just been buried for so long. Do you have any type of energy or feeling around that when you do that? Not like waking the dead, if you will, but do you have experiences where you feel like you have some sort of energy or spirit around you, like thanking you for bringing the story to alive, or sharing this legend, or whatever that looks like?
I definitely feel like I have spirits around me sometimes that are pushing me to do it. like go and write this, and get this information out there, and share with people. I think I don't know that I've ever felt sort of a gratitude from spirits, but I definitely feel like some of them really want this done. That I'm kind of doing it because it's not just something that needs to be done in a wider sense, but it's something that some of these beings that I'm connected to want done, want out there. So,
Yeah. I mean, I just asked that from one witchy to another. You think about those types of energies, and when you're opening that type of platform, you kind of wonder, are they thankful? Are they upset that you're doing it? Are they, in gratitude, or whatever that looks like for them?
I definitely think the ones, at least that I'm primarily connecting to, I don't know if gratitude would be exactly how I would say it, but they definitely seem to want this. They want it out there. They want that broader view of fairies, so that it's not just necessarily just that one little slice or this little slice, that people are kind of seeing that range and that diversity. So I suspect I'll probably be writing about this forever, unless I disappear into a fairy hill one day, and then you'll all know where I am.
Yeah, if Morgan ever disappears, we know she got taken by the fae.
Yes, that would be the prime suspect, definitely. That happened before in 1691 to Reverend Robert Kirk, who wrote like one of the foundational books about fairy lore, knowledge of fairies.
Really?
Yep. And the folklore is that he, the truth is definitely that he did collapse while walking on a fairy hill. But the folklore is that the fairies took him, and because he was writing so much about them. So yeah, prime suspects if I disappear. You heard it first here.
We know.
Yeah.
We'll definitely know. So switching tracks here a little bit from the fairies, what about leprechauns. You wanted to talk about those little rascals for a minute.
I actually love leprechaun folklore because it's another of these things that I think we tend to have this partial understanding of, which again, there's nothing wrong with that's what we find in a lot of the cases. But there's so much more to it. And, what most people are familiar with is sort of the modern understanding, the modern folklore of leprechauns, which are, kind of small fairy shoemakers dressed in green, have a pot of gold. If you catch them, they'll either give you your pot of gold or they'll grant you wishes. But actually, and I found this out when I was researching my book, A New Dictionary of Fairies, that the leprechaun folklore in Ireland goes back into mythology, into, I believe it's the 9th or 10th century is where we initially see these stories. And they were actually originally water spirits, water sprites. Yep. And they had a whole society, the story that they show up in. There's a king and a queen and all sorts of other little spirits. They are little. They're supposed to be like 18. Well, they're bigger than this, but they're supposed to be like 18 inches tall. And originally they were known to wear red. And then that at some point turned into the green that we know today, which happens. I mean, folklore changes and fairies evolve the same way that humans evolve. They're not kind of stuck in amber. They do change and adapt. But I always thought it was really cool the way that the older folklore had them as these powerful spirits kind of connected to water. And they appear in two different myths, The Adventures of Fergus MacLeody and the Death of Fergus MacLeody. And in the second one, the King of the Leprechauns is actually teaching Fergus about tree lore, magic with trees, what energy and what power certain trees have, which is super cool and very witchy, quite frankly. If you're interested in tree magic, that would be a story to look at. But, to kind of see how they went from that and then over the years, kind of the way people experience them and the way the anecdotal accounts were. And then it shifts into, what we think of today, which is still that same thing, but it's just a different variation of it.
Yeah. So how did they end up being a big part of St. Patrick's Day tradition? How did that happen?
I think that was a combination, honestly, probably of Irish Americans. I will blame Irish Americans, which is, me inclusive, for a lot of things when it comes to the stereotypical idea that we have for St. Patrick's Day. But I definitely think that became sort of the default image a lot of people have, because it was very popular in Irish American stories. One of the first written accounts we have of modern leprechauns, the green wearing pot of gold shoemaker leprechauns, was actually written by an Irish American in 1848. So it's definitely folklore that's super embedded, over here in the diaspora. And it's certainly been exported back to Ireland, because you do find it there too. They actually have they actually have a leprechaun museum in Dublin. So, like I said, there's a lot of stuff to do in Dublin if you're ever there. And the Leprechaun Museum is definitely an interesting place. But it's, I think it's because of the green that they wear. They're supposed to wear green. And also this idea of, if you can catch one, you get this pot of gold, or you get these wishes. And that's definitely sort of a fun thing. Yeah. I do not encourage anyone to do this, but my children in the school definitely did the whole leprechaun trap thing.
Oh, no.
To try to catch them. So, it's certainly something people have a lot of fascination with. And of course, the way that the folklore moves and shifts around, you do find a lot of stories in Ireland now about the leprechauns as we would, understand them today. So, and that's kind of all over the place. You can't escape the leprechauns.
See,
I'm sounding very ominous tonight. I'm not trying to.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, leave it up to everyone's interpretation. That's all right. We'll do it anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't really known or learned much about leprechauns. I always just thought they were a made up entity for this particular holiday. So of course they're real. Why would they be real? But about this holiday, St. Patrick's Day. Tell us a little bit about the history of St. Patrick's Day and how did there ever become a St. Patrick's Day to begin with?
Sure. Well, he's of course a Catholic saint.
Yes.
He is the patron saint of Ireland. I think a lot of people would sort of argue that St. Bridget deserve the title a little more, but that also can be my own bias showing through.
Maybe.
Maybe. I'm very fond of St. Bridget. So is St. Patrick, he was supposed to have been over in Ireland in the 5th century, and he established some churches, particularly one in Armagh, which is in Northern Ireland, in Ulster. And he kind of became known, particularly when his hagiographies, which is like saint biography, was written in the 7th century, and then there was another one in the 12th century. He sort of became like the face of the church for converting Ireland to Christianity. It's not historically accurate. He was not actually the one who did that. There was a bishop in Ireland before he went there, and there had been Christians in Ireland before he got there, but he ended up becoming sort of the poster boy for it. And as time went on, he became the patron saint of Ireland. And the story is that March 17th commemorates the day that he died. So he died on March 17th. I believe it was in 461. I think I might be wrong about the year, but that was why the Catholic Church made March 17th his particular saint's day. And in Ireland, it is a very big deal, a big celebration. Not so much the way we have it over here. It's a more solemn religious holiday. For example, it's a holiday for the whole country. Like nobody goes to work on St. Patrick's Day.
Everything's shut down.
Yep. Banks are shut down. All of that. It's a national holiday. So it's a little different from what we have over here.
Yeah, we do things a lot different over here, don't we?
We do.
How did most witches become a thing, though? Because our St. Patrick's Day is all about green beer and shots of Jameson. And corned beef and potatoes.
Yep. I think it started, honestly, and again, to blame the Irish American diaspora, I think it started with Irish Americans who were trying to preserve that sense of the holiday that they had, either grown up with or their parents had grown up with. But because they're removed from the country itself, it also became this sort of cultural celebration. And then we start to see the parades and wearing of the green. That actually has a lot of political implications, which I know nobody in the U.S. understands. But
I was going to ask you about that, and I'm sporting some green.
Yep. Green represents Catholics. If you ever see the Irish flag, it's green and white and orange. Mm-hmm. The green stripe is for Catholics. The orange stripe is for Protestants. The white stripe is for peace between them, because the country's had a lot of turmoil because of that. So you would not wear orange on St. Patrick's Day, at least where I live, because that's a Protestant color. And I do not support these views, just to be clear. As I'm saying this, I'm just relaying kind of the the way people think about it and kind of why I think it's so important. Because it was a way to kind of connect to that heritage. Mm-hmm. And you wear green to show that you're proud, to be Irish, to be, in this case, Irish American. And the corned beef and cabbage in Ireland, it would be potatoes and cabbage and bacon. Although their bacon is more like what we would call ham, to be fair. But over here, they couldn't get that 150 years ago. And so instead they would get corned beef because it's fairly inexpensive kind of meat. And so we kind of see this corned beef and cabbage, which is a very Irish American and North American kind of thing. And you get these layers of traditions building up. For me growing up, St. Patrick's Day, we never went to church because I was not raised Catholic, but we always had corned beef and cabbage. We always did something cultural, like go see Irish dancers or go see performers or singers. And we would always tell stories and talk about, the family and kind of the history. So yeah, St. Patrick's Day, very layered and complicated.
Yes. I think that's the situation with most holidays. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
We have a way of changing things up from their original form.
We do. We definitely do. And I think humans in general, there's just something about us that likes to ritualize things and likes to make things sacred, I guess we could say. Now the whole like green beer, kiss me, I'm Irish, everyone's Irish thing, that I think was just people wanting to make it fun and make it something other people would want to participate in. And now it's completely out of control. So it's, yeah.
No, it really is out of control. It's a thing.
It really
is. But, to each their own. Actually, Bill, my producer, has a question for you. Is there any specific Irish culture traditional music, that lyrically speaks of the mystical lore of Ireland? And could you recommend a few if possible?
Okay. Well, the composer, Turlo O'Carolan, the first name might be a little tricky to spell, but O'Carolan, just O, and then apostrophe Carolyn. He was supposed to have learned his music from the fairies. This is how the story goes, that he was blind. That's a true fact. And that he had fallen asleep on a fairy hill one night in Ireland and heard fairy music. It came to him and he became a very renowned musician. This was in the 17th century and composed quite a lot of music, which you can still find many different people use his songs. So that would be one to look for. The Chieftains would be a band I recommend. They do a lot of O'Carolan's music. There's a particular song called Shibeag Shimor. I could give you one of the spellings I know of. There might be variations, but it's Sidhe, which is she, means fairy hill. Beag, Beag, means small, so small fairy hill. And then she again, so Sidhe. More, M-O-R. The O has a little accent mark over it, but I don't know if they always do that in the song titles. Shibeag Shimor literally means little fairy hill, big fairy hill. And that song is supposed to be about this battle between two rival groups of fairies in Ireland, between this little fairy hill and this big fairy hill. So that's definitely one to look into. And there's a band called the Wolf Tones, Wolf with an E on the end, and then just Tones. They do a version of that song with words. They put lyrics to it. because usually it's just a musical piece. But that would definitely be one to look at for sort of the mystical lore end of things. There's a band called Clannad, Clannad. They have quite a few songs that are on the more mystical end. They actually did the soundtrack for a show in the 80s called Robin Hood, Robin the Hooded Man, in England, which is a really good show. It only ran 3 seasons, but highly recommend it. And so they have a song about Carnanos, and they do a song about Newgrange. Trying to think of what else. They have quite a few that are on the more mystical lore. And yeah, I could probably continue giving music recommendations for the next half an hour, so I'll leave it at that.
I love that you even had an answer. A lot of people say just, I don't know, I don't remember their names. I just listen to the music.
I grew up on this.
You have this big, beautiful brain too. I mean, obviously you've written so many books and
thank you.
Have so much information in there. It's just awesome.
I grew up listening to all of this music. My dad had records. For all of you out there who don't know what a record is, so horribly
I know
dating
what an
myself
8-track is.
Yeah. Say, vinyls, as they say, I think today. Yeah, so record player, the whole deal.
Yeah, isn't that funny? How times have changed.
Yeah, my youngest is 8, and there are certain things he'll say where I'm just like, "Oh, buddy, like you have no idea." He actually asked me once if everything was black and white on TV when I was growing up, and I was like, "Ouch, it wasn't quite that bad." But I do remember payphones and records. So
yeah, that was the thing. They were fun. That's how I grew up too.
Yep, good times.
So you are a practicing pagan, is that correct?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about paganism. I've had a handful of pagans on the show, but that wasn't really the topic that we talked about. We talked about more of, their topic they were sharing, like you have been doing. Mm-hmm. But I love learning more about paganism. So if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. So basically, as I've said, I'd always had these experiences, and I got very into folklore. I was not raised in any religion. My dad was Irish Catholic. My mother was Protestant, which is a huge no-no. And the only way their parents would agree to let them get married was actually if they promised not to raise any children they might have in any religion. So that was the world I entered into. We were not raised with anything.
That's okay.
And yeah, what that meant though is when I was, 11 and 12, I ended up stumbling across a book by Scott Cunningham called Wicca, A Guide for the Solitary Practitioner.
I have it.
It's one of those classic books. Yep. And for me, as someone who had all these experiences, and had this belief in fairies, but had no actual structured religion that I'd been raised in, reading that book was like mind blowing. And it was a big epiphany. And I was like, you can make this a religion. Like this is what I can do. This is cool. Yeah. So to me, it was just sort of the thing that made the most sense, because I already kind of, I believed in ghosts and spirits because I occasionally will see them, and I believed in fairies. So, pagan gods are not a big step away from that. So I got into pagan witchcraft effectively when I was fairly young. And for me, it's just sort of an intuitive thing. It makes sense for how I see the world. The idea of connecting to the cycles of the world around me. The idea that there are these beings and they make sense. They're supposed to be there. They're not scary. They're just like squirrels are supposed to be here, so are ghosts. It's fine. And you know, the pagan gods for me in particular, because my focus was very Irish, it became the Irish gods that I was really interested in. And again, it just, it made a lot of sense to me. I am one of those people who believes that there is no one true way for anyone to believe. I think that we all have a different truth that kind of goes in the same direction. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, ultimately, hopefully anyway, we're all trying to be better people and, you know, use this lifetime to learn to be better, which is at least what my witchcraft is about. I can't speak for everything else out there, but yeah.
Well, automatically there's this stigma when people hear you're a witch. They automatically, you know, go to their conditioning of a witchy hat and a black gown and a familiar that's a black cat.
Yep.
But it's not like that. Witchcraft is not, I mean, it can be, but typically, no, it's much different than that.
Yeah, it tends to be a lot about connecting to the natural world, and a lot of witches tend to focus on healing.
Yes.
And learning how to live more in rhythm with the world that we're in healthier ways, in better ways. And, you know, it's a balance. So there's definitely aspects of it that are more of a struggle as opposed to things that are more intuitive. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a religion. So it has its things where you're like, I really don't feel like, you know, getting up and doing this today, but it's a holiday, so this is what we're going to get up and do. I assume that other religions also share that feeling. not super motivated.
I mean, anytime you have to do something out of obligation, it does change the energy of it.
It does. You know, my personal practice, the particular witchcraft that I follow, does a lot with particular constellations when they're at certain places, kind of follows the stars instead of the sun kind of a thing. So there's definitely that feeling of like, well, you know, tonight's the night when it's in this alignment. So, you know, you kind of have to do it tonight if you're going to do it. Right. Or you're gonna have to wait another year till it comes back around. But overall, you know, it's a fairly joyful thing. And I mean, I think the hardest part for me, honestly, with being a witch is dealing with the way some other people interpret it, and act around it. You know, I've mentioned a couple times, I think now that I have kids, and my oldest, bless them, is not always the most subtle person out there. And we've had some issues, you know, throughout the school years with bullying and getting picked on, because, and I understand other children don't understand, you know, when your child is saying, oh, we don't celebrate Christmas, we have Yule, and that's when Santa comes for us, because that's how we do it in our household. You know, other kids are like, no, you don't. That's not real. You know, you're making that up. And, you know, that's hard for a kid. But besides that, the actual spiritual practice itself, I find to be very fulfilling. So,
yeah. There's something about not being in the same box as everyone else. You're always up for being criticized or judged or ridiculed or whatever that looks like. So
people tend to fear what they don't understand.
Right.
You know, that applies to a lot of things. It's just a human flaw, I guess we would say, that, you know, when you don't understand something, a lot of people, not everyone, thankfully, but a lot of people tend to respond immediately with, I'm afraid of this, and therefore it's bad, and I don't want it around me. And, usually if you just keep an open mind and learn a little about it, it's not always, but usually it's not as bad as you were initially afraid it was.
Right. I think that's with everything too. And it goes to, the spiritual practice that I believe that on the other side of fear is freedom. And the more you educate yourself, the more aware you are, the less scary it all becomes.
Mm-hmm. I think, that's a lot of why I always try to keep an open mind. When I meet new people, even if I really don't understand where they're from or, what their path is, I figure ultimately most religions and spiritualities out there are trying to help people be better people. So, yeah, I hope so. I hope so too. I prefer to choose hope in this case and be optimistic.
Right.
I can be very pessimistic about humans in general, especially in large groups, but in this case, I try to choose optimism.
Yeah, as a parent, I have felt that same way this evening. I love humans. They're the best.
They have their moments.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Well, because we have so much time, I have some random questions to ask you. How about that? So we'll just some that didn't quite fit into without interrupting and that sort of thing. So we're going to just bounce all around for right now. I don't know if you brought up earlier, but cryptids. We've talked about cryptids on the show before. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was telling you we had a guest who sees cryptids and saw some in the background of the image here. And I was like, what are you looking at?
Right.
Tell me about cryptids from your point of view, and what is it that I'm actually looking for?
I think cryptids are fascinating, which, to be fair, I think a lot of things are fascinating. Obviously, this interview has made that kind of clear, but cryptids interest me because they kind of fit into this category that's sort of everything else. Like anything that's not clearly something we already kind of have a box for tends to get put into cryptids. And I do think that some of them fit the sort of broader definition that we would see with fairies and folklore. If you filed off the serial numbers and didn't say the name of the being and just described like an encounter, and didn't say where it happened, some of them could be mistaken for fairy encounters. Mothman in particular. I have a friend that talk about Mothman quite a bit. But Mothman, if you didn't use the term Mothman and just described the events around those appearances and didn't say where it happened, you could easily kind of fit that into some of the fairy lore we find in Europe. Particularly the showing up right before, something sketchy happens or disaster happens, and sort of not being clear whether it is a man or whether it is something else, not a human, but like a man with wings or something that's more than that, because there's a range of physical descriptions that I've seen, only appearing at night. Again, from what I've seen, I have not studied this as in depth as my friend has. So if they're listening, they're probably cringing and thinking, you're forgetting this story. Yeah.
You're getting it all wrong.
You're forgetting this story that happened, this 20 years ago. But just in general, I think there's a lot of really fascinating similarities there. And then, you have some of these other cryptids that it's really hard to fit them into a category. Like the idea, as I understand it, with cryptids, cryptozoology, is that people tend to think they're probably like a real world animal that just hasn't been found and identified, but some of them clearly have these supernatural things going on with them. So yeah, it's just,
what type of supernatural things?
I'm so going to jump into Bigfoot here, and then everyone is going to yell at me because I'm not an expert on Bigfoot.
Well, we probably have listeners who really are into this topic, so tread lightly.
Feel free to jump into the chat if you're a Bigfoot person and I misstep here. But I've heard stories with Bigfoot where they're doing things that we would expect more of something that isn't necessarily a biological human world creature, appearing and disappearing. I've read at least one account where the person who had encountered the Bigfoot felt that there was some sort of telepathic thing that was going on. So things like that. Yeah. To me, I'm like, maybe there's like an extra layer to this. There's a gentleman named Joshua Cutchin who has written a couple really good books. The one I'm thinking of in particular, Trojan Feast, really compares Bigfoot lore and fairy folklore and alien lore and kind of looks at the common denominators there. And I was very persuaded by some of what he was saying about the comparisons with Bigfoot and then fairies. Not that I'm saying Bigfoot is a fairy, so please don't send me hate mail for that. Definitely not saying that. But there's some interesting crossover in the experiences that people have with Bigfoot in particular. And not just Bigfoot in the US, but when we see that particular type of being in other places, like the Yeti, and I can't remember what they call it in China, but I know they have something very similar over there. I think it's called the Yowie in Australia. I could be wrong.
What's your take on Bigfoot now that you've brought it up? What do you think about that creature in general?
I am an open-minded skeptic. I think that there's clearly something going on. Anytime we have so many stories and so many anecdotal accounts, to me, that's more than just, someone making it up or people, for whatever reason, hoaxing. I think that when you have, and when you have them globally as well, that's also another thing for me. When you have them in a lot of different places, I think there's got to be something to it, whether it is some sort of real world animal that we just haven't found and identified, which, that sounds unlikely, but then you're constantly seeing stories in the news of the species that was thought to be extinct for 100 years, but no, now they've cited one. Or, right. Scientists have just discovered this new species here that no one ever knew was there. So, I don't think anything is completely impossible.
Right.
But it could also be supernatural. It could also be something that's not a physical creature in the way that we would normally understand that concept.
Right. Or multi-dimensional being of some kind.
Yep. Then we get into that whole multidimensional, interdimensional, which would certainly explain some of the accounts that people have said. So, open-minded skeptic.
Right. There's so many possibilities and none that we can prove of.
Yep. I say the same thing about aliens, for the record.
That was my next question. Talk to me about aliens. What's your take on aliens?
We're already on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fairies, leprechauns, Bigfoot, are they all aliens?
Probably. That's probably someday what we're going to find out, is it was all just the same thing and just messing with us in different ways. So my personal opinion tends to be that a lot of alien encounters people talk about are actually fairies, because fairies are kind of known for being able to distort people's perceptions. They have this magic called glamour, where they can kind of make you not just see things, but also feel and taste and smell things that, the way they want, as opposed to what might actually be happening. And there's such an intense similarity between alien encounter anecdotes and fairies. Things like the time being different, the idea that, if you have a fairy encounter, often it will seem either very short when it's actually a long amount of time has gone by, or it'll seem like a long amount of time is going by and it's actually very short. And that's something we see with fairies. That's also something that's very common with alien encounters. The idea of people feeling paralyzed, being fully aware, but not being able to move or speak. That's something we see with both. Seeing flashing lights or lights moving in the trees or around you. That's something we see with both. So you kind of end up with this checklist where it's both columns are being checked off the exact same ways. So that tends to be where I fall on it.
That's why I wonder, are they all the same thing, just showing up differently? There's so many possibilities.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, people who are very into ufology and aliens will say the exact opposite, that fairies are aliens and that all the historic accounts of fairies were actually aliens. So, not my viewpoint, but I'm putting that out there to be fair.
Oh, I've heard it all, especially here on the station. We have such a wide variety of guests with different shows, and a lot of the times the topic is, anything ufology related. So,
yep. Which it is a fascinating topic, and as I said right at the beginning there, that I am an open-minded skeptic about aliens. I do tend to blame fairies, or suspect them more often, but I have friends who swear that they have seen UFOs that are, I trust them. They're not the sort of people who would just say that, like they clearly had an experience.
Right.
I haven't personally seen that in all the list of things that I've seen. Haven't seen that, but I'm open-minded to it. I don't think it's impossible.
In all the list of things that you have seen, what by far has shattered you the most? Like, I cannot even believe this happened. Like, I can't believe I saw this or had this experience. What is that moment for you?
That's a tough one. Because I've had such a range, and I'm making my life sound much more interesting than it is. Trust me. It's actually not that interesting, but probably I'll go with this one. And this is another one that I wasn't alone. There were two other people who also experienced it. And my friend owns a store in a city near where I live. And it was midsummer, which is a big night for fairy shenanigans. And we'd had the front door of the store open. We are kind of on the edge of the city, so, there's not like a lot of wildlife or anything going around. And it was getting later at night. We were getting ready to close up and leave. It was probably 9:30. And all of a sudden, this huge, like palm-sized, it looked initially like a big white moth, flew in the door and right up to the ceiling. And I have never in my life seen anything that big that's an insect. It looked like bird-sized, but it was a moth. And as I'm looking at it, I realized it looked like a little man, all completely white and gray with these big white wings. And both of my friends also saw it. We were trying to figure out how to get it out of the store, which is a weird problem to have. How do you get this like the bird-sized fairy out of your store at 9:30 at night on midsummer? And it had kind of gone up to where her front window is. She has a big like bay window. And the one friend that was with us kind of pointed at it and was like, "You," in a sort of, loud voice. And it immediately dropped straight down into the window display And we all went over to try to find it, and it was gone, completely gone.
Disappeared.
Yep. And this was not something that could have disappeared. I mean, it was huge. It was really big. And that was definitely an experience where I was like, that was ridiculous.
Right. And you're not the only one who saw it.
Yep.
So then you're like, it was real. It wasn't my imagination.
Yep. 2 other people. And, not only just that it was like a little man with wings, which is weird enough, but then the fact that it just completely disappeared in an area where there was nowhere for it to have gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that stays with me to this day.
Oh, I bet it would stay with me too. It has been so much fun getting to know more about you, Morgan, and all of the things that you research and share with the world. How can other people learn more about you or get in touch with you or grab one of your books?
Sure. My books are on Amazon. For people who don't like Amazon, you can also go to Barnes & Noble. Most brick and mortar stores can get them in if you ask. I am on social media. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, all under Morgan Daimler, because one of the few very intelligent things I've done in my life is I decided to just make all my social media just my name. Very simple and straightforward. So I'm pretty easy to find generally. Yeah.
And how do you spell your last name, just in case they're not watching, they're listening to record?
That would definitely help. Daimler.
Perfect.
If you're familiar with Daimler Chrysler cars, it's that same last name. So
wonderful. Well, it has just been such a joy, and I really have enjoyed my time with you, and I know others in the chat room have just enjoyed it as well. Thank you for showing up and sharing your time with us. And
thank you so much for having me.
Being here. Yeah. We'd love to have you back. Stories are our favorite. I mean, it is Soul Wanderings.
Oh, I could tell stories just for 2 hours.
Well, I'll add you to the list and we'll be in touch.
Awesome.
Thank you again. And to those of you who are interested in the show and supporting the show, you can find more information on myself and the show at soulwanderings.com. And be sure you guys are tuning in to kgradv.com for my show and all of the other great shows hosted here on the station. And save that date for March 31st at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for KGRA's birthday bash. 9 years, you guys. It's a big deal. Thanks for being here with us tonight, and have a happy day.